Hey everybody. I think a lot of my videos are trying to play chess a few moves ahead. This one I wanted to kind of just reorient and make it about what should people do right now? What should they do about washing their hands, take out packages? What should you do if you're sick? What should you do if somebody in your family is sick? And I think those are some of the basic questions people are grappling with and they're having a tough time because the mathematics and the risk of these things is extremely complicated to essentially calculate. So I just want to go through some ideas. What should normal people do? Right now, just get as much toilet paper as you humanly can and stock up hard on the hand sanitizer. So that would have been good information 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I'm just kind of teasing you guys or joking because I think right now we're all experiencing basically loss. We've lost a lifestyle, we've lost an event, we've lost, and so we're going through the stages of grief. Essentially, we're getting angry, we're shut in. It's just a difficult time. So that's why I made a joke. Okay, cool. Um, Most of the difficulty with how we behave with COVID-19 has to do with the fact that the math is insanely complicated. The math is a logarithmic type of math. It's growing in a geometric progression. And we ourselves have a hard time with that. And then at the end of that little awesome math is some sort of really sick game of Russian roulette if you get this, whether or not you get really, really sick and in the ICU or you don't get that bad. Every interaction with every human is a risk stratified interaction. How at risk are you with this disease? It really depends, right? So it's a question with every interaction. If the person you're interacting with, such a person like myself, a doctor, we're very high risk, you should be afraid of us. Or if you yourself, know that you have an immune problem, or you're older, this changes the risk profile substantially, and it is a exponential type of risk difference with age, and other factors like that. So be careful. Don't just trust who you're interacting with just because they seem nice, etc. There's a built-in fallacy in this disease where people minimize their symptoms. They get a little cough, they think it's probably nothing, and by a couple days later, it's a real thing. So you can't just trust screening alone. So one of the most difficult things about this is the degree to which the math is very, very complicated. So when you're talking about if something's on a surface, there's two different pieces of information you need. One is you need to know how much the initial viral load was. Did somebody just barely touch it who was not shedding much? Did somebody who was really, really sick cough all over it the second they dropped off your package? Those are mathematically massively different events. One might have 10 viral particles, one might have millions and millions of viral particles, and the risk is going to be associated with the initial inoculum. Once that inoculum's there, based on the temperature, the material, and the other conditions like humidity, it's going to degrade. But it's going to degrade with what's called a decay function. So it's going to degrade with a half-life, much like radioactivity. So if you touch something has a 2-hour half-life, and you touch it at the second it gets delivered, let's say, 2 hours later, you've taken your chance of having a problem with that and divided by 2. 2 hours later, that's divided by 2. So all of these risks are essentially are according to a decay mathematics. So that's why we have these inappropriate things that say that it was detectable on the Princess cruise ship 17 days later. It has to be a functional virus, functional of infecting you. Just because there's some mRNA that's there, RNA from the virus, doesn't mean anything truly. The only way to know for sure if what was there was able to infect someone would be an electron microscope and seeing that it's still in its active state, and or testing it on like an animal model. That's why these studies about how long it's there are very, very confusing to go through. I want to set the record straight on mask and gloves. Um, Masks and gloves have been used to prevent infection at the hospital for years and years and years and years and years. So we know they work, okay? That's number one. Number two, people like the Surgeon General were afraid of supplies getting diverted from the hospital, so he told you didn't need them. That was really kind of a inaccuracy, shall we say, and or not true. During a pandemic, people who are normal people essentially need to practice extremely good hygiene, and I'm going to explain to you why we're probably going to all be in an America in the future where all of us are wearing masks until the pandemic is over. Masks work in many ways. They themselves, when you're wearing a mask, prevent people around you from getting your droplets and your aerosols from your mouth while you're talking, while you're sneezing, while you're coughing. It makes it not matter if somebody coughs and forgets to cover with their elbow. Um, Gloves themselves also help because they encourage the wearer not to touch their mouth, their nose, or their eyes, which is critical with this disease. So when you have gloves on, like dirty dish gloves, you don't think, hey, I'll scratch my eye. Even if you have like winter gloves on, you don't think, I'll pick my nose right now. So it in of itself keeps your behavior better when you've got those on. It protects the entire herd. It's a reminder not to touch the mouth and face. It protects those around you from the cough and the sneeze. I use this analogy, the New York City bus. If you run a crowded New York City bus right now, would you want, number one, everyone to just be sitting there? Number two, every other person on the bus to have a mask? Number three, you to have a mask? Or number four, everyone on the bus has a mask? It's simple. All of us would choose last. We'd want everyone on the bus to have the best mask possible, and that would keep us safe. Gertner, which does meta-analysis, says that masks for everybody in your society is better than social distancing. It's the number one thing. We could just leave our houses and go do anything we wanted as long as we all had a mask on. So, I'm going to mention here nitrile gloves N95 and 100 if I was immune suppressed. I'm going to get to that a little bit in a later slide. For disinfection, this stuff's pretty easy. All this is really well proven. Alcohol greater than 65%. So like Purell and any of those things, isopropyl alcohol, those come in like really high concentrations or around 80-90%. 5% bleach. This can be spray, this can be wipes, any of it's going to work. And then another little pro tip is the UV light box for your phone, especially if you're a doctor and you're out, you're using it in public. That's a real possible vector. You can just sterilize that in that little UV box for 30 minutes. So they've told us stay at home, stay at home, stay at home. It's true. Plan ahead, get what you need, think 2-3 weeks in advance. Use delivery services if they're available. I know everyone's doing that. Social distancing, it's real. If somebody in your family is a doctor and on the front lines, there should be social distancing in the house. Take advantage of special hours if you can, and shop at out of the way places, smaller grocery stores and things like that, that ask people where things aren't crowded and are more controlled. Connect with social media, phone and Zoom. People are doing that. I want be creative. That's, I guess, maybe why I'm making this YouTube thing. Make things, try to create something. Exercise and stay healthy. And then I wanted to also tell you the number one in scientific studies, the number one thing that makes people the happiest, the surest way to be happy, is to help other people. So I would highly recommend you find a way to do that. Now, if you must leave your house, you have to think about every single time you leave your house as two separate situations. One's a controlled situation where you know you're not going to be within 6 feet of anyone, no one's going to come and cough in your face. The other is an uncontrolled situation. So like for me, when I'm at my job and I have to go see patients, that's an uncontrolled situation. And then, a flight or a bus right now is, I would say, even worse than uncontrolled situation. It's a chaotic, dangerous, scary as heck situation. I just want to tell everybody, masks save lives. We need to stop the mask shaming. If every single person wants to wear a bandana around their face, I would be extremely happy about that if I was on that bus right there. I would much, much, much prefer that to them just coughing all over the place, all over me. It's a statistical thing. Even if they only catch 75% of their stuff, that's lowering your risk by 75%. So highly recommend. So this is a tricky one. My patients and friends have been asking me, what do you do if you're old? You're high risk. You have a weakened immune system. I'm telling my patients, you can't be around your kids. If you really need to be around them, and they're respectful, 6 feet of social distancing. Young kids are extremely uncontrolled. For grandparents right now, to see young kids is potentially deadly, because if the young kids themselves are hanging out with their friends, it's just a very high risk situation. You must screen anyone you're around for fever, cough, chills, and still distance yourself. The best would just be to go into lockdown, hibernation. Maybe you own a farm and life hasn't changed much. If you do, I'm jealous. Wash your hands in and out of the house. Never touch your hands to your mouth, face, or eyes, and wash your hands when you return. And you should never get this ever if the environment is controlled, if you're not forced to be in tight places. If you have to go out into the world to get groceries, let's say a CVS in a big city and it's an uncontrolled space, I would highly recommend you wear the best mask you can get. Don't steal it from a healthcare worker. Borrow it from your friend who's a carpenter. But an N95, an N100, a respirator, any of these are going to block particulates. And then ask your politicians to deregulate oxygen concentrators in your community in case you were to develop some dyspnea, just as a backup for you. Opening packages on your doorstep. I think this is common sense. We got a respiratory illness here that's going around, COVID-19. Open them as you wish. Make sure you got what you want. Go wash your hands afterwards, and then the stuff on the inside is going to have been in there for a long time, so pull your stuff out. Or just leave them out for 24 hours. This doesn't have to be rocket science. If your package has just been a little bit of virus on it, it's very unlikely that it's going to not decay pretty quickly, especially on cardboard. So I wouldn't really fear this. If you want, just leave them out on your porch for 24 hours and then open them. I think the chances that you get it through this transmission is incredibly low. For takeout food right now, I don't know about that one. It's hard. I only get what I can microwave or put in the oven, so I know I'm totally fine. I don't know if the workers there are coughing. I don't know what's going on. My big advice to you right now, if you run a business that does takeout, I would have gigantic signs and advertising that says all employees are screened for fevers, they get their temperatures checked, they're screened for new cough, and we require a mask to be worn at all times during the preparation, and our delivery people also are required to wear a mask. I guarantee you that will create an additional boom to your business. Um, so moving on, helpful advice: reach out to a friend who's a doctor. There's just a lot of my friends have reached out to me. I've tried to help them. Follow what's happening at your local hospital. Your life is really on the line here medically with the region you're in and what's going on, just like your food supply. You need to kind of be aware of what's going on locally and hunker down. And just to get information, ask yourself, what happens if I get this? You have to have kind of a game plan, almost like when you're pregnant and you're ready to go to the delivery. Try to stay ahead of this. It's hard. Anticipate your needs. It's impossibly hard at the pace in which this is going. Plan for the worst, and let's all hope for the best. There's plenty of encouraging information coming out every day. I hope some of what I have in this video will encourage you, because if you just start walking outside with your dog and you're in a controlled environment, you wash your hands, you don't touch your eyes, don't touch your mouth, don't touch your nose, you're not, then statistically you'll be very, very, very likely to be safe. So as I mentioned, wash your hands, don't touch your face, eyes, and nose while out, wash your hands, have 6 feet around people, controlled environments will statistically be helpful for you. All coughs and sneezes need to be covered with the elbow of no mask. If somebody else around you is coughing or sneezing, then it needs to be treated like artillery. Advocate for people to wear masks. It's a simple solution. Be vigilant. I'd appreciate all of you guys' comments below, and if you want to subscribe, that'd be great. One final comment about masks and which masks. They're all good. A bandana is good if that's what you have access to. That's protecting those around you. Just a plain surgical mask will protect those around you and slightly protect yourself. The N95s and N100s and respirators and reusable masks, those protect yourself, those protect people around you. Let's get them for the healthcare workers. I appreciate all these stories I'm seeing where healthcare workers are getting them. But we ourselves, if we have them, especially for other uses, there's no reason we should just keep them in our closet. Let's protect each other.